So hello and welcome to Dolby Bassett, and we're deeply honoured to be in the company of Rodrigo Cortés, the award-winning director and producer and writer, and his latest movie Red Lights is about to be released around the world. So Rodrigo, can you maybe describe a little bit about what you've been doing here in the last 2 days?
Well, actually, as you know, I already mixed red lights with 5.1. So when I was given the opportunity to play with this new system with Dolby Atmos, I chose one of the first scenes just to try to test the accuracy of the system, which is what I've been basically doing for these last couple of days.
Excellent. And what was your? I mean, do you think that this new system is allowing you greater creative freedom, or is it adding extra kind of time to the mix that is tricky to work around?
Well, I'm pleasantly surprised because when a new system is presented, you prefer to be a little bit skeptic. You prefer not to believe too much on certain things you read about because they are just sentences that can be interpreted in any possible way. So you need to put your fingers over the board and try to see what happens. And of course, I heard everything about these helicopters spinning around and these thunders exploding above you and all these things. And I thought, okay, I'm going to see something really spectacular that's good for certain kind of shows, which is fun and it's good. But that's not what I found. What I found is something that gives you a lot of accuracy, that gives you a great control of nuance, that make easier to become real the things that you have in head, not in an approximative way, but in a very accurate way, which in a way makes you think in a very different way. Your old way of thinking in a natural way changes. It's not that you get the same result and then you try to improve it or to enhance it. Is that you start thinking differently because you have total control of every side of the theater, which affects even the narrative in terms of mixing. It's been not only fun but amazing. I'm pleasantly surprised.
So, how did you choose the scene that you were going to pick as your test scene for mixing in Dolby Atmos?
At the beginning, I felt, of course, tempted of using one of the spectacular ones, one of the scenes of theaters with the earthquakes and the explosion, many kinds of sounds sounding here and there, and giving you a lot of creative possibilities to have fun with. But I decided to choose another one. The seance of the beginning of the film, the spiritism session, that allowed me to test this total control of specificity, that allowed me to be very specific, very precise, with a total precision, which I found with the system. At the beginning, I was afraid of doing certain things in a more conservative way, started to work with ambience or music or very specific bumps. But then immediately I started to play with dialogues too. In a very natural way, it simply happened. And once I saw what I did the first day after a few hours, I immediately understood that I needed to reevaluate the whole thing again, even dialogues. And I needed to start to play with them in a different way because with the, let's call them the old style, every time you moved something, you noticed it a lot. So if it didn't have a very narrative importance, it became kind of intrusive in a way. But now you have the possibility of controlling it in a very subtle way. So you get a wider range of effects on the audience. You can affect them with much more control. It's like if you added them, every one of them, every spectator, more buttons of volume, so you can touch every one of them, one more, one less, having much more control of their reactions.
It's interesting you mentioned earlier on about the potential for being distracted. If you were to use some devices in a channel-based system like 5.1 where you had elements coming from the surround speakers in the auditorium, that perhaps that runs the risk, we've always found, that it could distract people from what's going on screen. And with Dolby Atmos, do you think that there's still that possibility that the extra resolution that the surrounds can give you, and having the overheads as well, might give the danger of that happening again? Or do you think you could control around that and make sure that you can decide exactly how you distract or not the audience?
Well,
with
the possibility is always there in the sense that it depends on how you use it. But you have a much more accurate tool. So if you know what you are doing, you won't get that. At the end of the day, it's always about storytelling. And everything you use are tools. You're trying to create a certain emotion on the audience, and you're trying to you're trying them to understand a specific kind of information that you want them to know. Maybe because you want to change them and you want to surprise them. Maybe because you want to get them somewhere. And then you have tools. You can use them in a very destructive way, which is always a risk. If you get fascinated by the tool itself, and you don't remember that it's a medium and you think that it's a goal on itself. But here you don't only have that risk, but actually in a way you have less risks because you can have much higher control of everything. So it sounds paradoxical, but you can be now more subtle. Because you have more control of nuance.
That's interesting because back in 1887, Edison was trying to join picture and sound together, and it wasn't really until the late 20s that finally sound on films with the talkies came into existence. And I think the very early efforts were quite crude. But each and every time a new invention has come into the cinema, I think it's taken a little bit of time for people to engage, to use that innovation for its real creative merit.
Yeah, at the beginning they are toys, and then they become tools.
Yes.
You can help that. At the beginning you have a certain language that was made for the very first three decades of cinema. And a very complex language was born after these 30 years, very, very complex. And then sound appeared. So everybody started to say, okay, this is not real cinema. Now what we have is theater, everything is so still. And it was, because just hearing someone singing or whatever was enough. Of course, it was fascinating. But it just takes 2 years to change it. Then becomes a new tool. You recover all that language that was previously invented, and you implement a new tool. That's what happens again with widescreen or with color or with, you name it. Imagine whatever, with Zoom, with the Steadicam. At the beginning you just do Zooms in the 70s, or you use the Steadicam to recover the whole forest or whatever. And then it's just a tool that allows you to do certain things, and that's not so valid or so good for other things. That's exactly what is going to happen. But what I found more fascinating about Atmos is that it's a very natural next step. It's a huge jump, but you don't even feel it as a huge jump, like if it was something completely new, came out from the outer space or something like that you need to adapt to. You start to adapt to that, even thinking in a different way, in 4 seconds. It's so natural. It's just something logic, in a way.
So you can imagine Dolby Atmos being a very useful next generation audio system for a wide variety of genres for movie making?
Yeah, for sure, because it's valid for every kind of genre. It's not good because it's spectacular. It's good because it gives you more accuracy. So it's easier to get what you want, and it's easy to get closer what you have in head to what you have in hand after having finished your film.
That's fantastic. And your roots are in sound designing as well, and music production and so on. So as a director, does that discipline, that heritage in sound, does that give you a better view of how sound and pictures unite together to tell that story as you intend? Do you always think of things when you're thinking about a script or a movie, about how the sound can work in that aspect as well?
Yeah, you bring it to a new level, but on the other hand, you have less margin to make mistakes, because now the connection between the image or the picture and the sound is higher. So you have to have a better control of everything. You have less margin. You have to be better in a way to make that connection, because when that connection doesn't happen, it's more noticeable.
So is sound 50% of the experience, or more or less?
No, sound actually uses to be 70% of the experience, even though people don't know it, which is good.
Subconscious.
I'm happy that the audience don't know that and that they don't notice that. But actually you affect them in a very, very powerful way, in ways they don't understand. They think it's just something spectacular, but actually with sound, you are controlling their attention, not only their emotions, And if they have a professional, if you let me call it this way, perception of what they see, is because of what they hear. Thank God they don't know it.
So over the last 2 days, I think you managed to recreate the opening scene, not only in the original English language, but also in Spanish as well. How did you find that? Was that technically a very easy thing to do with Atmos?
No, yeah, technically it was very easy. Actually, for certain reasons, we started in Spanish, which is a kind of frustrating in a way because that's not the original version. So it was a scale because we were. It took us a little bit longer than I wanted, so I could work on the original language. But then the translation was that easy, so I was relaxed in a second because it basically was automatic. I thought that there would be many things to balance then when I had the automatic conversion, and it simply worked. So it translated perfectly well in 10 minutes. So all my fears were not based on reality.
That's great. And can you imagine that you'll be using Dolby Atmos on your next release?
Well, unless you invent something better or something very, very similar, yeah, because it simply gives you more definition and accuracy. So that's what you want. You don't want to go back.
Well, we look forward to working with you in the future, and best of luck with Red Lights.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.